My wife sold my late father's entire car collection while I was at his funeral. She used the money to buy her mother a vacation home. When I found the empty garage, she said they were just old cars. I didn't yell. I didn't pack. I just sat in that empty garage until morning. What I did next took her whole family by surprise. My name's Mark, I'm 34, and until about 3 months ago, I genuinely believed the worst thing life could throw at me was losing my father. Turns out losing him was just the opening act. The real gut punch came courtesy of the woman who stood next to me at his hospice bed, held my hand, told me everything was going to be okay, and then quietly liquidated his entire legacy while I was standing over his casket saying goodbye. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. My dad, Warren, was a lifelong mechanic and car restoration hobbyist out of Billings, Montana. Not a wealthy man by any traditional standard. He drove the same pickup truck for 19 years and wore boots until the soles were literally flapping. But the man had one serious passion that he poured every spare dollar and weekend into for over 30 years, and that was classic American muscle cars. We're talking a 1969 Chevelle SS 396, a 1970 Plymouth Barracuda, a numbers-matching 1967 Shelby GT 500, a 1971 Dodge Challenger R/T, and the crown jewel of the collection, a fully restored 1963 Corvette Stingray split-window coupe that he and I rebuilt together from the frame up when I was 16. 7 cars total, all garage kept at his property on a 5-acre spread outside of town. Every single one willed directly to me. Dad made that crystal clear years before he got sick. When the pancreatic cancer diagnosis came 18 months ago, one of the first things he did was sit down with his estate attorney and make sure that collection was legally ironclad in my name. He had the cars individually appraised. Combined value was just over $740,000. That Stingray alone was worth $210,000. These weren't investments to him, though. They were memories. Every car had a story. The Barracuda was the first car he ever drove. The Chevelle was what he took my mom on their first date in. The Shelby was the car that was sitting in the driveway the day I was born. He used to say that metal holds memory better than people do, and honestly, I never argued with that. Now let me introduce the other key player. My wife, Colleen. We've been married for 6 years. Met through a mutual friend, dated for about a year, tied the knot in Bozeman. Colleen worked part-time in medical billing, and I ran a small construction management company. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. The cracks started showing about 2 years in, and they almost always traced back to Colleen's mother, Darlene. I'm not going to pretend I'm the kind of guy who throws the word narcissist around casually, but Darlene could drain the warmth out of a room faster than a blown furnace in January. She was a retired school administrator from Missoula who somehow believed the entire world owed her a standing ovation for existing. And Colleen just could not say no to her. It was like watching someone try to argue with gravity. When Dad got his diagnosis, Colleen was supportive at first. But the longer it went on, the more I noticed little comments creeping in. How much longer do the doctors think? And have you talked to him about the house yet? Then the questions got more specific. What's happening with the cars? Came up at least 4 times. I told her the same thing every time. The cars go to me. That's what Dad wants. End of discussion. She'd nod and drop it. But the look on her face told me a different story. Like she was doing math in her head that I wasn't invited to check. Dad passed on a Tuesday in October. Pancreatic cancer doesn't mess around, and the last 3 weeks were rough. I was at the hospice center in Billings every single day. Colleen came once during that final stretch. Once. She said she had a migraine. I didn't have the energy to fight about it. The funeral was that Friday. We held it at the same small church Dad had attended for 40 years. Half the town showed up. I gave the eulogy. Barely held it together, but I got through it. Colleen sat in the second row, scrolling her phone during the service. I noticed. I didn't say anything. After the burial, there was a small reception at my Uncle Porter's house. Colleen had left early, said she wasn't feeling well. I stayed for a few hours, shook hands, accepted condolences, ate food I couldn't taste. I got back to Dad's property around 7 that evening. I'd been going out there every night since he passed, just sitting in the garage with the cars, listening to the nothing, remembering everything. It was the one place that still felt like him. I pulled up the gravel driveway, walked around back toward the detached 4-bay garage where he kept the collection. The lights were off, which was normal. What was not normal was the padlock. The padlock I had put on 2 weeks ago was cut clean off, laying in the gravel like a piece of trash. My chest went tight. I grabbed the handle, pulled the bay door up, and just stood there. Empty. All 4 bays. Completely, totally, spotlessly empty. No Chevelle. No Barracuda. No Shelby. No Challenger. No Stingray. Not a single car. Not even an oil stain left behind. Somebody had come in, loaded up 7 vehicles worth $750,000, and vanished while I was burying my father. I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, called Colleen. She picked up on the second ring, calm as still water. "Hey, I was wondering when you'd head out there." I said, "Colleen, where are the cars?" And she said it, casually, like I'd asked about a pile of old newspapers. "Oh, I sold them. All of them. I found a dealer who gave us a fair deal. They picked them up this morning." I couldn't speak. I literally could not form words. She kept going. "I used the money to put a down payment on a vacation home for Mom. She's been wanting a place on Flathead Lake for years, and I figured this was the right time. They were just old cars, Mark. They were just sitting there collecting dust. Mom is actually going to use the house. It's practical." I stood in that empty garage, phone pressed to my ear, and felt something I have never felt before. It wasn't anger. Not yet. It was something colder. Something that settled into my bones like concrete setting. I looked at the bare walls where Dad's tools used to hang. I looked at the oil-stained floor where the Stingray used to sit. I looked at the workbench where he and I spent 1,000 Saturday afternoons together. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. I didn't throw the phone. I just said, "Okay," and hung up. Then I sat down on the cold concrete floor of that empty garage and stayed there until morning. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I screamed or cried or drove home and packed a bag. But I didn't do any of those things. I sat in that silence for hours and I thought. I thought about the titles. I thought about the will. I thought about the appraisal documents. I thought about the fact that Colleen just admitted, on a recorded phone line, to selling property that was not hers to sell. And somewhere around 3 in the morning, when the Montana cold was cutting through my jacket, I realized something. She had no idea what she'd actually done. Not legally, not financially, not in any way that mattered. She thought she'd pulled off something clever. She thought I'd huff and puff and eventually let it go because that's what I'd always done when it came to Darlene's nonsense. But this wasn't about Darlene's birthday dinner or her passive-aggressive comments about our house. This was my father's legacy, and the woman who was supposed to be my partner had stolen it from me on the day I buried him. I sat in that garage until the sun came up, and when I finally stood, my knees aching, my back stiff, my eyes dry, I didn't feel broken. I felt focused. Because what Colleen didn't know, what she couldn't have possibly known, was that every single one of those cars had been formally transferred into my name 3 months before Dad died. The titles were filed. The paperwork was done. Those vehicles were my sole legal property, and she had just sold them without my knowledge or consent. And the money she used to buy her mother's dream house? That money was mine. Every last cent of it. Which meant that Darlene's new lakeside paradise was built on a foundation of fraud. And I was about to tear it down to the studs. The sun hit that empty garage floor like it was mocking me. I stood up, brushed the dust off my jeans, and drove home in silence. No radio. No phone. Just the sound of gravel under my tires and the machinery in my head already turning. When I walked through the front door, Colleen was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, acting like it was any other morning. She looked up and smiled. "You stayed out there all night?" "Mark, that's not healthy." I poured myself a cup of coffee, sat down across from her, and said, "Tell me about the sale." She didn't even hesitate. She told me she'd contacted a classic car broker out of Great Falls named Dale Whitford about 5 weeks ago, while Dad was still in hospice. 5 weeks. She'd been planning this while I was holding my dying father's hand. She said Dale came out, looked at the cars, and offered a package deal. The total was $440,000 for all 7 vehicles. I almost choked on my coffee. 440? Colleen, those cars were appraised at over $740,000. She waved her hand. Literally waved it, like she was shooing a fly. Appraisals aren't real, Mark. That's just what people say they're worth on paper. The actual market is totally different. Dale explained it all to me. He was very knowledgeable. I'm going to let that sink in. My wife sold my father's $740,000 car collection for $440,000 to a broker she found on her own, and she was defending the deal like she'd negotiated world peace. "And the money?" I asked. "I already told you. It went toward Mom's place on Flathead Lake. She found a beautiful 3-bedroom, 2-bath right on the water, listed at $525,000. We put down $400,000 and she's financing the rest. I said, well, I handled it. But it's for all of us, really. Mom said we can use it anytime. I want you to understand something. I've run a construction management company for 9 years. I've fired subcontractors, negotiated million-dollar contracts, and handled disputes that would make most people's heads spin. But I had spent years swallowing my frustration with Colleen's relationship with her mother because I thought that was what good husbands did. But in that moment, I did the single smartest thing I have ever done in my life. I nodded. I took a sip of coffee, and I said, I need some time to think about all this. Colleen's shoulders visibly relaxed. She let out a little breath, like she'd been bracing for a storm that never came. Of course, I know it's a lot, but once you see the house, you'll understand. Mom is so happy, Mark. You should have heard her on the phone. I smiled at Colleen, told her I was going to take a shower and get some rest. She nodded and went back to her phone, probably texting Darlene about how well the whole thing went over. But I didn't go to sleep. I went to the bedroom, locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and started making a list. Not on paper, in my head. First call I made was to my buddy Emmett. Emmett and I go back to high school, and he's a property law attorney in Billings. Sharp as a scalpel and about as gentle. I called him, told him everything, and the first thing he said was, do not confront her again. Do not mention lawyers. Do not change anything about your daily behavior. Just keep being the Mark she thinks she knows. Second call was to my dad's estate attorney, Boyd Winslow. When I told him what Colleen had done, he went dead quiet for about 10 seconds. Then he said, Mark, those titles were filed in your name. Your wife had zero legal authority to sell those vehicles. This isn't a family dispute. This is theft, conversion of property, and possibly fraud. Third call was to the broker, Dale Whitford. When I identified myself, there was a long pause. Then he said, she told me she was the co-owner and that you had authorized the sale. Did she show you any documentation of that? Another pause. She showed me a document that appeared to be a power of attorney. My blood pressure spiked so hard I could feel my heartbeat in my teeth. Dale, I never signed a power of attorney for those vehicles. I never signed any authorization at all. Dale's voice changed. Got real careful. Mr. Hartwell, I think I need to speak with my attorney. Yeah, Dale. I think you do. I hung up and sat there, running the numbers. Colleen had forged a power of attorney. She'd undersold the collection by roughly $300,000. She'd funneled the proceeds into a real estate purchase under her mother's name. And she'd done all of this while I was at my father's funeral. I spent the rest of that afternoon acting normal. Made lunch, watched television, asked Colleen about her day. She was chatty, almost giddy, which told me everything I needed to know about how much guilt she was carrying, which was absolutely none. That evening, after she went to bed, I went into my home office and started pulling files. Dad's estate paperwork, the original car appraisals, the filed title transfers, copies of the will, insurance documentation on the vehicles, photos of every car from every angle, including detailed restoration logs that my father had kept in spiral-bound notebooks for decades. Then I checked our joint bank accounts. The $440,000 hadn't flowed through any account I could see, which meant the money had been routed around me entirely. That's not an accident. That's intent. I pulled our mortgage documents, credit reports, and tax filings. And the full picture started getting real ugly. I found a credit card I didn't know existed. Opened in my name. Balance of $38,000. A personal loan application, also in my name, for $25,000, taken out 6 months ago. And a series of transfers from our joint savings to an account number I didn't recognize, totaling over $60,000 across the past year. My wife hadn't just stolen the cars. She had been systematically bleeding me financially for at least 12 months. And the vacation house for Mommy? That wasn't a one-time act of impulse. It was the crown jewel of an ongoing financial scheme that I'd been too distracted by my father's illness to notice. I sat in that office chair at 2 in the morning, surrounded by paper, and I felt the anger arrive. Not the hot kind. Not the kind that makes you throw things or say words you regret. The cold kind. The kind that sharpens everything. The kind that makes you think in straight lines. I called Emmett the next morning before Colleen woke up. Told him about the credit card, the loan, the transfers, all of it. He was quiet for a minute and then said, "Mark, this isn't just a divorce case anymore. This is criminal fraud. We need to bring in someone who specializes in financial forensics. And we need to move carefully because if she gets wind that you're looking, she could start destroying evidence." I asked him if he knew anyone. He gave me a name, a forensic accountant out of Helena named Sloan Daring. He said she was the best in the state. Cold, thorough, and absolutely merciless with numbers. "Call her today," Emmett said. "And Mark, I know this is hard, but you need to keep smiling at your wife. You need to keep eating dinner with her and watching television with her and sleeping in the same bed. Because the second she suspects you know the full scope of this, she'll start covering her tracks. And right now, her tracks are everywhere." So that's exactly what I did. I smiled. I made small talk. I kissed her goodnight. I told her the pulled pork she made was good, which was a lie because it was dry as sandpaper, but that wasn't the point. The point was that Colleen looked at me every day that week and saw the same pushover husband she'd been manipulating for years. She had no idea she was living with a man who was quietly documenting every fraudulent dollar she'd ever moved. She had no idea that 3 different professionals were now building parallel cases against her. And she had absolutely no idea that the vacation home she'd just bought her mother with my stolen inheritance was about to become the single most expensive mistake of Darlene's life. She thought I was grieving. She thought I was soft. She thought the worst was over. The worst hadn't even started. The next 2 weeks were the longest performance of my life. Every morning I woke up, made coffee, sat across from the woman who'd robbed me blind, and acted like everything was normal. I asked about her day. I picked up groceries. I even helped her hang a new set of curtains in the living room, which felt like putting a fresh coat of paint on a house I was about to burn down, metaphorically speaking, of course. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, the machine was running. Sloan Daring, the forensic accountant Emmett recommended, was everything he said she'd be. I drove to Helena on a Wednesday, told Colleen I was meeting with a subcontractor, and sat down in Sloan's office for 3 hours. She didn't react emotionally to numbers. She just traced the fractures. I handed over everything. Sloan spread the documents across her desk and started working through them with a red pen. Within the first hour, she found 2 more accounts I didn't know about. One was a checking account at a credit union in Missoula, opened under Colleen's maiden name with me listed as a secondary account holder without my consent. The other was a money market account under Darlene's name that had received over $85,000 in deposits across the past 14 months. "This is textbook financial fraud," Sloan said. "Your wife didn't just skim money. She built an infrastructure. This took planning, patience, and a level of deliberate deception that's going to look very bad for her in front of a judge." She laid out the full picture. Over the past year and a half, Colleen had siphoned approximately $123,000 from our joint finances through a combination of the secret credit card, the unauthorized loan, the savings transfers, and a series of smaller cash withdrawals she'd disguised as grocery and household expenses. Couple that with the $440,000 from the car sale, and the total exposure was north of $560,000. I sat there doing that math and feeling something between nausea and disbelief. $500,000. My wife and her mother had extracted $500,000 from me across 18 months, and I hadn't caught it because I was spending all my energy watching my father die. Sloan assured me that every single dollar was traceable. Paper trails don't lie, Mark. And your wife left a paper trail that looks like it was designed by someone who thought they'd never get caught. While Sloan was doing her work, Emmett was building the legal case. He brought in a family law attorney named Vera Tate, who specialized in high-asset divorces involving fraud. When she heard the full scope, she looked at me and said, "We're going to make this very clean, very thorough, and very final." The strategy was multi-layered. First, file for divorce with a detailed financial fraud complaint. Second, pursue a civil recovery claim for the stolen vehicles and fraudulently obtained funds. Third, file a formal criminal complaint for identity theft, forgery, and conversion of property. But the piece that mattered most to me, the one that kept me going through those miserable 2 weeks of play acting, was the car recovery angle. Boyd Winslow, Dad's estate attorney, had already confirmed that the title transfers were airtight. Those 7 cars were my sole property. Colleen had no legal standing to sell them, and the forged power of attorney she'd used was a felony in Montana. Boyd contacted Dale Whitford's attorney and laid it out plain. Your client purchased stolen property using a forged document. The vehicles need to be returned or the full appraised value needs to be paid. If neither happens within 30 days, we'll file suit against the brokerage. Dale's attorney, to his credit, didn't try to fight it. He knew. Dale knew it from the moment I called him. What I found out later was that Dale had only resold 2 of the 7 cars. The other 5 were still in his possession at a storage facility in Great Falls. The Chevelle and the Challenger had gone to a collector in Wyoming, but Dale had all the contact information and the new buyer hadn't retitled them yet. So 5 cars were recoverable immediately. The other 2 were traceable and legally claimable. And the Stingray, my dad's Stingray, the one we built together, was still sitting in Dale's warehouse. When Boyd told me that, I had to pull over on the side of the road because my vision went blurry and I couldn't see the lane markers. Now, while all this was happening, Colleen was floating. She was FaceTiming Darlene every evening, talking about the Flathead Lake house, planning a housewarming party. One night, she actually asked me if I wanted to drive up that weekend to see the house. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "That sounds really nice. Maybe after things settle down with the estate." She beamed, and I thought about how strange it is that someone can look at you with affection and still be the person who dismantled your life behind your back. The following Monday, Sloan sent me her full forensic report. 47 pages, meticulously sourced, with a timeline of every fraudulent transaction going back 20 months. It included screenshots of the credit card application with my forged signature, the loan documents with incorrect employment information that Colleen had fabricated, and bank records showing deposits into the Missoula Credit Union account that matched the exact dates and amounts of the withdrawals from our joint savings. I read the whole thing twice. Then I sent it to Emmett and Vera. Vera called me within an hour. "Mark, this is one of the most comprehensive fraud cases I've seen in a domestic setting. We have enough here to not only secure a favorable divorce settlement, but to pursue full restitution and criminal charges. She's not going to be able to plead ignorance. The evidence is overwhelming." I asked Vera about the Flathead Lake house. She explained that because the house was purchased with funds directly traceable to stolen property and fraudulent accounts, there was a strong legal basis for filing a constructive trust claim. In plain English, that meant a court could declare that the vacation home purchased with my money was legally my asset, regardless of whose name was on the deed. Darlene's dream house wasn't hers. It was mine, and a judge was going to tell her that. We set a date. Emmett, Vera, and I picked a Friday, 3 weeks out. That gave Sloan enough time to finalize her testimony package, gave Boyd enough time to complete the vehicle recovery paperwork, and gave Emmett enough time to coordinate with the county attorney's office on the criminal complaint. I spent those 3 weeks in a fog of precision. Every day I went to work, managed my crews, handled my contracts, came home, and played the role of the oblivious husband. Every night, after Colleen fell asleep, I reviewed documents, confirmed timelines, and ran through scenarios with Emmett over text. I kept a secondary phone locked in a toolbox in my truck. I paid Sloan and Vera from a new personal account Colleen had no visibility into. The hardest part wasn't the deception. The hardest part was the silence. I wanted to scream at her every single day. I wanted to throw the forensic report on the kitchen table and watch her face collapse. But Emmett's voice was always in my head. Keep smiling. Keep cooking dinner. Keep being the Mark she thinks she owns. One night, about 4 days before the date, Colleen was on the phone with Darlene, and I heard Darlene laughing through the speaker. Loud, cackling laughter. Then Colleen said, "I know, Mom. I told you it would be fine." He didn't even push back. I think he's actually relieved the cars are gone. I was standing in the hallway, just out of sight, holding a glass of water. I listened to them laugh about me, about the cars, about how easy it had been. Then I walked to the bedroom, set the water on the nightstand, and opened the calendar app on my hidden phone. For days until the entire framework of Colleen and Darlene's little empire came crashing down around them. And the beautiful irony? The paperwork that would destroy them was their own. Every forged signature, every fraudulent application, every unauthorized transfer, it was all theirs. I didn't have to fabricate a single thing. They'd built the bomb themselves. I was just the one who found the detonator. That Friday night, Colleen texted Darlene a photo of the lake house at sunset with the caption, "Our little slice of heaven." Darlene replied with a heart emoji and the words, "We deserve this." I read the text over Colleen's shoulder while she held the phone up to show me. She was so proud, so happy, and I smiled and said, "It really is beautiful." Because it was. It was a beautiful house, and in exactly 4 days, it was going to be legally mine. The last 4 days before everything went live were the quietest of my life. Not peaceful quiet, loaded quiet. The kind of quiet that exists inside the barrel of a gun right before someone pulls the trigger. Monday through Wednesday, I ran final check-ins with everyone. Emmett confirmed the divorce filing was locked. Vera had the civil fraud complaint ready. Boyd had the vehicle recovery demand letters and criminal referral packet completed. Sloan had her forensic report notarized and ready for court. I sat in my truck on Wednesday afternoon and read through the entire divorce filing one more time. 36 pages. Every fraudulent act documented and backed by bank records. Emmett had also included something I hadn't expected, a formal request for an emergency asset freeze. Because the Flathead Lake house had been purchased with provably stolen funds, Vera had prepared a motion asking the court to freeze the property immediately, preventing Darlene from selling, refinancing, or encumbering it in any way until the civil case was resolved. If the judge granted it, and Vera was confident he would, Darlene's lakeside paradise would essentially become a legal prison. She could look at it, but she couldn't touch it. Thursday morning I woke up and looked at Colleen sleeping next to me. Peaceful, untroubled. I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness. Just a flat, clear focus, like the surface of a lake before the wind hits. At lunch I called my younger brother, Tully. He lives in Bozeman, works as an electrician, and he'd been my rock through Dad's illness. I'd kept him in the loop on everything. "Tomorrow's the day," I said. Tully was quiet for a second. "How are you feeling?" "Like I'm about to rip a Band-Aid off a wound that's been infected for 6 years. He laughed, but it wasn't a happy laugh. "You want me there? I need you to do something for me tomorrow morning. Drive out to Dad's place and be there when the transport truck arrives." Boyd's arranged for the 5 recovered cars to be delivered back to the garage between 9 and 11. "I want someone there I trust." "Done," Tully said. "And Mark? Dad would be proud of how you handled this. Not the revenge part. The patience part. That hit different than I expected." I sat in my truck for a good 5 minutes after we hung up, just breathing. Thursday evening, the Last Supper. I know that sounds dramatic, but that's exactly what it felt like. Colleen had made pasta. She was in a great mood because Darlene had called earlier to say she'd found a kayak for the lake house and wanted Colleen to come up that weekend to help organize the garage. The garage. Darlene was organizing a garage while I was still staring at the empty one my father's cars used to live in. The irony was so thick you could choke on it. Colleen talked about the weekend plans. She asked if I wanted to come along. I said I had some project estimates to work on, but maybe next time. She said that was fine, kissed me on the cheek, and went to watch a cooking show in the living room. I washed the dishes, dried them, put them away, and then I went into the office, closed the door, and sent one final email to Emmett, Vera, Boyd, and Sloan. The subject line was simple: green light. Emmett replied within minutes, filing at 9 a.m. sharp. "Stay off the radar until you hear from Vera." I barely slept that night. Not from anxiety, from anticipation. I ran through every contingency. What if the judge didn't grant the freeze? Vera said the evidence was overwhelming. What if Colleen destroyed evidence? Sloan had already secured certified copies directly from the banks. Every base was covered. Every exit was sealed. Friday morning. The day. I got up at 6. Colleen was still sleeping. I showered, dressed, made coffee. Normal routine. I sat at the kitchen table and drank my coffee slowly, looking around the kitchen, thinking about how many mornings I'd sat in this exact chair, in this exact house, married to a woman who was actively dismantling my life. It felt surreal, like watching someone else's memory. At 7:45, Colleen came downstairs. She was dressed casually, hair in a ponytail, already texting Darlene. She poured herself coffee, sat down, and started talking about what she was going to pack for the lake house trip. "I'm thinking we should bring the good towels. Mom's guest bathroom only has those thin ones." I nodded. "Good idea." At 8:55, I excused myself to use the bathroom. I locked the door, sat on the edge of the tub, and watched my phone. At 9:01, a text from Emmett. Filed. Judge has the emergency motion. Vera's in chambers. At 9:22, another text from Emmett. Asset freeze granted. Flathead Lake property is locked. Criminal complaint filed simultaneously. County Attorney's Office is reviewing for charges. At 9:30, a text from Boyd. Vehicle recovery demand served on Dale Whitford's attorney. 5 cars confirmed in transport to Warren's garage. ETA 11 a.m. recovery demand for the remaining 2 vehicles sent to the Wyoming buyer. At 9:35, a text from Tully. I'm at Dad's place. Transport truck just pulled up. I can see the Stingray on the flatbed, brother. I closed my eyes. I sat in that bathroom and I closed my eyes and I breathed, and for the first time in 3 months, something inside my chest loosened. Just a little. Just enough to remind me that I was still in there somewhere, underneath all the strategy and the anger and the grief. Then I stood up, washed my hands, walked back into the kitchen, and sat down across from Colleen. Good day today, I said. She smiled. The best. I'm going to start packing after lunch. At 10:15, I got in my truck and drove to Emmett's office. Vera was already there. They walked me through the filings, the judge's order, and the next steps. The divorce papers would be served that afternoon by a process server at our home address. Colleen would receive them when she opened the door. The civil fraud complaint, naming both Colleen and Darlene as defendants, would be served simultaneously at the Flathead Lake house. Vera had arranged for a process server in the Flathead area to deliver the documents to Darlene directly. Both of them are going to find out at roughly the same time, Vera said, which means they won't have a chance to coordinate a story. Emmett added, and because the criminal complaint is already with the county attorney, anything they say from this point forward can and will be used. They need to understand that. Their attorneys will tell them, but by then, the damage will already be done. I left Emmett's office and drove to Dad's property. The transport truck was parked in the driveway, and Tully was standing inside the garage with the biggest grin I'd ever seen on his face. Behind him, 5 cars sat in their bays, exactly where they belonged. The Barracuda, the Shelby, the Challenger, the 1970 Nova that Dad had picked up at auction back in 2008, and the Stingray, my dad's 1963 Corvette Stingray, split-window coupe, midnight blue, chrome bumpers gleaming under the garage lights like it had never left. I walked up to it and put my hand on the hood, still warm from transport. I stood there with my palm flat against the metal, and I could hear my dad's voice. Couldn't make out the words. Didn't need to. Tully came up beside me and put his hand on my shoulder. Neither of us said anything for a while. Then my phone rang. It was Emmett. Process server just confirmed. Colleen has been served. She opened the door and he handed her the packet. I looked at Tully. Tully looked at me. And I said, Emmett paused. Apparently she read the first page, went completely white, and tried to close the door. Then she called someone. I'm guessing Darlene. The phone buzzed in my hand. Incoming call. Colleen. I held up the screen so Tully could see it. He raised his eyebrows. I let it ring 5 times. Then I sent it to voicemail. Within 30 seconds, the phone buzzed again. Then a flood of texts. I didn't read them. Not yet. Because my phone buzzed one more time with a text from Boyd. Darlene has been served at the Flathead property. She did not take it well. I turned the phone face down on the workbench, looked at the Stingray, and exhaled. The dominoes were falling, and every single one of them had Colleen's fingerprints on it. The voicemails started stacking up within the hour. I didn't listen to any of them at Dad's garage. I just sat on the old metal stool by the workbench, drank a bottle of water, and watched the sunlight move across the Stingray's hood while Tully made sandwiches in Dad's kitchen like it was a tailgate and not the dissolution of my marriage. I finally checked the voicemails that evening from Emmett's office. There were 11. The first 3 were from Colleen, escalating from confused to furious. First, Mark, what is this? There's a man at our door saying I'm being sued. Call me back right now. Second, you're divorcing me? Over the cars? I did this for us. You're overreacting. Third, you had people going through our bank accounts? That is a violation of my privacy, Mark. I will fight this. Vera looked at me after that one and said, she's going to learn very quickly that privacy isn't a legal defense against fraud. Darlene's first message was unhinged. Mark, this is Darlene. You are not taking my house. I paid for that house, and I will hire every attorney in Montana before I let you touch it. Emmett muted the phone. She didn't pay for it. You did. And every attorney in Montana is going to take one look at Sloan's report and walk the other way. Over the next week, the fallout unfolded like a slow-motion avalanche. Colleen hired a local attorney named Garth Pemberton who, to be fair, had a decent reputation in family law. But within 3 days of reviewing the case materials Vera sent over in Discovery, Garth called Vera directly. Vera told me the conversation was brief. Garth said, and I'm paraphrasing here, that his client had significantly underrepresented the situation and that he would need time to reassess his strategy. Translation: Colleen had lied to her own lawyer, and now her own lawyer knew it. Meanwhile, Darlene's situation deteriorated faster than a sandcastle in a rainstorm. The emergency asset freeze was airtight. She couldn't sell, refinance, or borrow against the property, and the remaining $125,000 on the mortgage was still accruing, meaning she was making payments on a house she might legally lose. Darlene hired an attorney out of Missoula named Wade Renfro, who argued she had no knowledge the funds were fraudulently obtained. The judge reviewed the bank records showing $85,000 in deposits to Darlene's money market from Colleen's hidden account and denied the motion in less than a week. The criminal side moved slower, but it moved. Colleen was formally charged with forgery, criminal conversion, and identity theft. She was arrested at our house on a Tuesday morning. I wasn't there. I was at Dad's garage, waxing the Stingray. Colleen posted bail the same day. Her father, Glenn, paid it. I heard he was devastated and had no idea what Colleen and Darlene had been doing. The confrontation I'd been expecting finally came about 10 days after the filing. Colleen showed up at Dad's property unannounced while I was there changing the oil on the Barracuda. She pulled into the driveway, slammed her car door, and marched into the garage like she still owned the place. "You need to drop this," she said. Her voice was shaking, but not from sadness. From anger. "You've made your point. You scared me. You scared my mother. And now you need to stop this before it goes any further." I wiped my hands on a rag and looked at her. "Colleen, you sold my father's cars while I was at his funeral. You forged a power of attorney. You opened credit cards in my name. You stole over $100,000 from our accounts and funneled it to your mother. What exactly is the point you think I'm making?" She didn't answer that directly. Instead, she went into a speech I'd clearly heard before, just never in this context. It was the Darlene playbook. Redirect, minimize, guilt trip. This is about your ego. It's always been about your ego. Those cars were sitting in a garage doing nothing while real people needed real help. My mother deserved that house. She sacrificed everything for me growing up, and you could never see that because you were always obsessed with your father's junk. I let her finish. I let every word land. And then I said something I'd been holding for 3 months. Those cars weren't junk, Colleen. They were the only part of my father I had left. And you knew that. You knew what they meant to me. You didn't sell them because your mother needed a house. You sold them because you could. Because you thought I wouldn't do anything about it. Because you thought I was weak. She stared at me. For the first time in 6 years, she didn't have a comeback. "I wasn't weak," I said. "I was waiting." She left. I didn't see her again. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Because of the documented fraud, the judge awarded me the majority of marital assets, including the house. Colleen's claims to equitable distribution were severely undermined by her own financial misconduct. Vera was surgical in her presentation, and Sloan's forensic report was entered into evidence without objection because Colleen's attorney couldn't challenge a single number. The Flathead Lake house was awarded to me through the constructive trust ruling. Darlene was ordered to vacate within 60 days. She fought it all the way to the last day, filed an appeal that was denied, and finally moved out on day 59 with a moving truck and a look on her face that could curdle fresh milk. I sold the house 3 months later for $540,000, which was $100,000 more than Colleen had paid for it. That money went directly into a trust fund for my future, managed by an advisor Emmett recommended. The 2 remaining cars, the Chevelle and the Challenger, were recovered from the Wyoming buyer within 6 weeks. Dale Whitford, to his credit, cooperated fully and refunded the buyer out of his own brokerage account. Dale also quietly settled with Boyd's office for an undisclosed amount to avoid a civil suit. I don't hold a grudge against Dale. He got played too. He just didn't check the paperwork well enough. Colleen pleaded no contest to the forgery and conversion charges. She received 2 years of probation, mandatory financial restitution, and a felony on her record. The identity theft charge was dropped as part of the plea deal, which Emmett said was standard but still left a bad taste. Darlene was never criminally charged, but the civil judgment against her for receiving fraudulently obtained funds totaled just over $90,000. She's still making payments on it. I've been told she moved back to Missoula and is living in a rented apartment near the highway. No lake view. As for me, I'm doing okay. Better than okay, honestly. I moved back into Dad's property full-time. I renovated the house, expanded the garage, and built a small workshop out back where I restore cars on weekends, same as he did. All 7 vehicles are back where they belong. The Stingray still has that cassette tape in the deck. I haven't touched it. I don't think I ever will. Tully comes out most Saturdays, and we work on the cars together. Sometimes Rosalind brings the kids, and they run around the yard while we argue about torque specs and whether Dad's old wrench set is better than anything you can buy today. It is, obviously, but Tully likes to argue. I don't talk to Colleen. I don't talk to Darlene. I don't think about them more than I have to. The anger's gone. The grief isn't, not entirely, but it's changed shape. It's less like a weight and more like a scar. Something I carry, but something that's healed. My dad used to say that the measure of a man isn't what he does when everything goes right. It's what he does when everything goes wrong and nobody's watching. For 3 months, nobody was watching. I sat in that empty garage and I made a choice. Not a loud one, not a dramatic one, just a clear one. And that clear choice brought everything home. Thanks for reading this far. I know it was a long one. If you take anything away from this, let it be this: document everything. Trust your instincts. And never, ever, let someone tell you that the things you love are just old cars. They're never just old cars.